I might need your help a little bit tonight and give me a quick break so you can talk for a moment if my voice starts to fail me. So just pray that it continues strong. Or if I stop to drink water or coffee, just bear with me. A couple quick housekeeping things. It is almost Christmas time, and so we're going to be taking the Wednesday after Christmas off, and because, well, actually at that point we'll be done. Because starting in the new year, we're going to be switching again to Tuesday nights, having all our Bible studies and that. So we're going to finish up chapter 6 and the beginning of the 7 this week. Next week, Lord willing, we'll finish chapter 7, and then the week after that, we'll have more of a kind of a pre-Christmas celebration. For those of you who didn't hear it last year, some of you wanted to hear it again, I'm going to do my Santa Claus, the real story of Santa Claus talk, so you can hear about why Santa Claus was actually a good Christian pastor, and we'll finish chapter 7 that we didn't get to. And then starting in January on Tuesday night, we'll continue on in chapter 8. 15. Yeah. In January.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You didn't say which week we start January.
I said it last week, so no, I didn't say that this time. You're right. So that's where we're going. Again, give me grace with my voice. Let's see how this goes. One of the very important questions you got to ask, of course, is what it takes to be clean. And for most of us, we live in a very clean society. We take showers every day, multiple times a day. You do, you should. But this becomes super relevant when you have a kid and a little boy kid going camping for a week. And the last thing that little Christopher wanted to do when camping for a week was bathe or shower in any way. And what makes it even worse is, running around barefoot and in sandals, of course. So I have these clear memories as a kid of at the end of it, my mom forcing me to get cleaned off and having to scrub and scrub and scrub my feet because the dirt is just stuck on, right? You're just yeah, and it won't come off. And then you rinse it and you're there's still dirt. And then you finally get it all clean. You're there's dirt encrusted underneath my toenails too. What is this? You can't get it away. But what about our sin? In the same way, we often think, because we live in a pretty moral society, we argue it's being lost in some ways, but that even gives us all the more feeling of cleanliness, because we look at those who are, less good than us. They're not so good, and we can feel pretty clean. And yet, we keep coming back to this idea of what sin is. Sin being a violation of the holiness of God. And so it's not just doing bad stuff, right? Hurting other people. Because if we were to think back to what do the people of Beth Shemesh in 1 Samuel 6, what did they do wrong?
They looked in the ark.
They looked in the ark, okay? What's the big deal about looking in an ark?
They were told not to.
They were told not to. It was disobedient. Or, as Proverbs 21 verse 2 says, every man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs his heart. Not even what we do, the Lord knows our heart. And so the people were supposed to obey the word of God. He warned them about this in Deuteronomy 12 verse 8, saying, you shall not do according to all that we are doing here today, everyone doing whatever is right in his own eyes. He goes on in Deuteronomy 12, basically, you have to worship me in the way that I commanded. I go back to that junior high lesson that I found years ago. Basically describes sin, S-I-N, as shove off God, I'm in charge, not you. The essence of sin is not trusting God and saying, I know better. Adam and Eve in the garden, taking the fruit. Yes, God said it. But it's me going, no, God, I don't trust you. R.C. Sproul rightly says in his book. Oh, really? Where is it? Aaron? He says this: God is never pleased with ignorant worship. Worship must be grounded in the knowledge of God. And we see that illustrated so well in the stories of Beth-Shemesh and the people of Kiriath-Jearim. Two different ways of following God. And we see that we are supposed to live in ways that trust God. Ultimately, because God has shown his goodness. Not only is he the creator who deserves our praise, he is the God who sent his son to die in our place. We can trust him because he is good. But we'll get there. First, we've got to review where we've been. So, let's talk with you again. The ark has been taken. This is the last time I'll have to do this. Well, actually, never mind. I'll do this again in when David finally takes the ark to Jerusalem. But the ark was up in Shiloh, got taken to the battle of Ebenezer, thoroughly defeated, right? Then taken down to Ashdod, where it fell before their God. Or, sorry, that was wrong. Their God fell before the ark. Get that right. And they're like, get it out of here. They sent it to Gath. Gath said, go. It got sent to Ekron. Ekron said, exit. It flew to Beth-Shemesh, and Beth-Shemesh said, bye-bye. And they sent it on to Kiriath-Jearim, as we will see today. But before we get there, we've got to look back in chapter 6. You can see how they ignored the commands of God. Like, for example, in verse 14, it says that at the end of verse 14, they offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. Problem was, the Bible clearly stated that they were supposed to only offer bulls, male cows, not female cows, to the Lord. Or in verse 15, it says, and they set the ark and the golden figures upon the great stone. Now, what was wrong with that? Do you guys remember? They took the ark and put it on top of a big stone altar. Why was that bad? What were they supposed to do with the Ark of the Covenant?
It's to be returned to the tabernacle.
Maybe, yep. And where did it go inside the tabernacle?
Holy of Holies.
Holy of Holies. Separated, no one can see it. And then, verse 19, he struck some of the men of Beth-Shemesh because they looked upon the ark of the Lord. What did they do wrong? They looked. Were they supposed to look? No. They were clearly violating the command of God.
I know we're not in this particular spot here. You mentioned Philistines. Is there ever any scripture passage that has where one Philistine was converted? I don't know about that.
A Philistine being converted.
Huh?
A Philistine being converted. It's an interesting question. I cannot think of any on top of my head, but that might be something to check into.
Specific Philistine?
Yeah, specific a Philistine. We'll see some of the other Canaanites even today, but we'll get there. So we saw that not only did the Philistines err, but the Israelites err, and God judges their presumptuous sin. If you guys remember this, a little chiastic structure there, seeing the fact that the story kind of goes in a pattern. We had the battle of Ebenezer, won by the Philistines. Ark is held by Gentiles in Philistia. The ark plagues Philistia. The ark returns, verses chapter 6. The ark plagues then Beth-Shemesh for their sin. And then we get this part here where the ark is held by Gentiles in Kiriath-Jearim. And then we'll get to, probably next time, how the battle of Ebenezer is won by the Israelites. This is where we're going. You see there's a reminder here again of the fact that the Israelites were no better than the Philistines. And in both cases, here we have another case of Gentiles who are being used by God. So, to get there, can someone read chapter 6, verse 20 through 7, verse 2? Just a small section. 6:20 through 7:2.
Who is able to stand before the Lord, holy God? To whom shall he go up away from us? So they sent messengers to him since
Kiriath.
Kiriath-Jearim, saying, Philistines have returned back to the Lord. Come down and take it up to you. And the men of Kiriath-Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord and brought the house of Abinadab and on the hill. And they consecrated the son of Eleazar to have charge of the ark of the Lord. From the day that the ark was lodged at Kiriath-Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel maintained after the Lord.
Thank you, Alan. So, again, saw that the holy God judged their presumptuous disobedience. And in verse 20, they make this phrase, who is able to stand before this holy God? A couple different views of what this can mean to stand. It could be referring to what David says in Psalm 15. Psalm 15 says, O Lord, who shall sojourn in your tent? Who shall dwell in your holy hill? Verse 2. He who walks blamelessly and does what is right and speaks truth in his heart. This is a statement of basically saying, who is worthy of standing before you, God? Who is good enough? It's the idea of standing before a superior as an evaluation. Or, there's another time that this is used, Numbers 16. Let's turn there quickly. Hold your finger here. Turn to Numbers 16. Back a few books. This is the story of Korah's rebellion. Remember, Korah is one of the leaders, the people of Israel, decides to fight against Moses, and basically is like, nope, I can lead the people better than you. I have a better plan than you, and God swallows him up in the earth. It ends up really badly. And we see something that doesn't really get better because the people still cause problems. Verses, let's do 41 through 48. Can someone read that?
16:41?
16, Numbers 16, 41 through 48.
But on the next day, all the congregation of the people of Israel rebelled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of the Lord." And when the congregation had assembled against Moses and against Aaron, they turned toward the tent of meeting, and behold, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. And Moses came to the front of the tent of meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from the midst of this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. And Moses said to Aaron, "Take your censer, put fire on it from off the altar, and lay incense on it, and carry it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun." So Aaron took it as Moses said, and ran into the midst of the assembly. And behold, the plague had already begun among the people, and he put on the incense and made atonement for the people, and he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped.
Okay. He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. What kind of standing is he doing here?
Praying.
Praying. Okay. Specifically, what is he praying? What is he doing in this prayer?
Asking the Lord to stop the plague.
Yeah. He's asking the Lord to stop the plague. And why is the plague happening? Because they grumbled. They sinned. So in asking the Lord to stop the plague, what is he asking the Lord to do about the sin that they have just done? To forgive it. Yeah, he's stepping in between them, or the word we use is he's being an intercessor. That's why intercessory prayer, the phrase is he's praying on behalf of the people. He's standing for the people. Who can stand between us and God, and help us? See, they knew they were not righteous. What made the people in Beth Shemesh know they were not righteous? A bunch of them?
Yeah.
A whole bunch of them died, right?
75.
And so they needed someone to stand. They needed someone holy, and they turned to Kiriath-Jearim. See, this is the important reminder again that sometimes God's judgment is needed for our disobedience because it shows our need. It's like, we don't have this too much here, but sirens, whether they're for warning of, like often happen, warning of invasion or bombings, or when I lived in the south where there were tornadoes, there were tornado sirens. The thing about sirens is they are so annoying. And if you are outside near one, it hurts. But you need sirens. Why? To warn you. Exactly. If you ignore the sirens, you're in trouble. Or if he's like, stupid siren, run over, hit the button to silence it, which you can't do for a good reason, right? In the same way, God's discipline is his kindness that woke up the Israelites to see that they needed him. See, the people of Israel, really, their lives remained unchanged. Not just in Beth Shemesh, but all over. They did not have the respect they needed. And if you're back in 1 Samuel chapter 7, if you look ahead a little bit, 1 Samuel 7, verse 2, Samuel shows up again. He says, "Put away the foreign gods and the Ashtoreth that are among you, and direct your hearts to the Lord, and serve him only." Who are the people of Israel serving at this time?
Anyone they chose.
Anyone they chose. This judgment is a way of waking them up that brings the whole nation to repentance here in just a little bit. God is preparing their hearts to spiritually hunger for him. I think this is one reason why, again, we as Christians have to be careful in just wanting to make people feel comfortable, wanting to take the pain away. Sometimes the pain in people's lives is God's kind working in them to wake them up. Now, I'm not saying we have to be heartless and be like, oh, suffering is good for you. Feel it. Feel the pain. No, but we have to be discerning and be careful that we do not encourage their sin. That we don't try and make their sin easier for them if that is the reason that the situation is happening. And often when we experience hard times, and sometimes like people of Beth Shemesh, we want to just kind of pass it on to something else. And might I suggest that one way we might do that is when it comes to confession. If you think about it this way, most of us have sinned. All of us have sinned. But most of us have had this moment where we quickly confess it to God. We're like, oh God, I'm so sorry. But then you think about it and say, wait, did anyone else see that? Oh, I'd be so ashamed if someone else saw that. You're like, we are more concerned what other people think, and we just so quickly say, oh God, yeah, okay, yeah, you forgive me, right? Yeah. Instead of going, God is holy. He is pure and righteous. He is good, as we talked about last week. We are open and naked and exposed before him. It should bring a moment of terror when we have our sin, and a moment of delight that we are forgiven. And I know, God is actually better at forgiving than people are. People are sometimes really bad at forgiving. So there's a reason that it's sometimes harder to go to people. But the point is, if we're more worried about what people think about us, we may not be seeing God's holiness the way that we should. Instead, we need to take sin seriously, as we see the people of Kiriath-Jearim do. So we have the fact that the holy people go ahead and take the ark. Verse 21 through 7, verse 2. They sent messengers up to the inhabitants of Kiriath-Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you." We've got to try and think, why are they sending it? It's this town that is about 15 miles northeast of Beth Shemesh. It's a very interesting town. Why are they sending it there? Well, Kiriath-Jearim is right here. It's a very, if you're taking notes, you can see there, it's a strategic location because it sits at the borders of Judah, Dan, and Benjamin. It's got a number of tribes connected. Both Benjamin is a powerful tribe at this time, but Judah, well, in the chronology, it might have all been wiped out too, we're not sure yet. But Judah is promised to be the future king. It's an important place. But it wasn't just a strategic place, it was also a religious place. Its alternative name in Joshua 15:9 is Baalah, which may indicate it was a high place, a religious place, before it was brought into Israel. Much like Shiloh was also a high place for the Canaanites before Israel took over, so they kind of maybe considered it religious. And interesting enough, where did they not call up to send the ark? Where was the ark before this? Shiloh. Why would they not say, let's go send it back to Shiloh? We have the ark. Go back there. Maybe it's not there anymore. The text doesn't say that, but we do learn from later from Jeremiah 7 that Shiloh was destroyed, so maybe Shiloh's gone. So they can't send it there. So like, what's the next religious place we can then send it to? Oh, Kiriath-Jearim. Okay. And then, interestingly though, it was also a Gentile location. It was a Gentile location. Hold your fingers here, or put a bookmark in, and go to Joshua 9. We gotta get the background here, because this is so relevant, especially for all you Goyim, or Gentiles, for those. So I get together with Jewish credit every once in a while. But this is so huge because we see this fact that the ark is being entrusted with a group of people who are Gentiles. That early hint and indication that this is for all the Gentiles. So in Joshua, Judges. Joshua chapter 9, we have the story of the Gibeonite deception. Sometimes that's really helpful on there. Remember, the Israelites were commanded to go into go into the land of Canaan and wipe out all the people. Because lest they marry with them and they get turned to their gods. So someone go ahead and read verses 1 and 2 of Joshua 9.
I can.
Please do.
I'm King James.
That's okay.
And it came to pass when all the kings which were on the side Jordan, in the hills and in the valleys, and in all the coasts of the great sea, over against Lebanon, the Hittite and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite heard thereof, that they gathered themselves together to fight with Joshua and with Israel with one accord.
Okay, so it's all the Canaanite cities are getting together, because back then they were city-states. Each city was its own nation. They kind of got together to fight against who? Israel. Yep. So then, instead, the Gibeonites are like, no, this is a bad idea. This is not going to go well for us. Because they heard what Joshua had done to Jericho. They're like, eee. So, can someone read verses 4 through 10? Someone else. No, you did a great job. Share the load. 4 through 10.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is the part that
acted with cunning and went and made ready provisions and took worn-out sacks for the donkeys and wineskins, worn out and torn and mended, with worn-out sandals on their feet and worn-out clothes, and all their provisions were dry and crumbly. And went to Joshua in the camp to Gilgal and said to him and to the men of Israel, "We have come from a distant country, so now make a covenant with us." But the men of Israel said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you live among us, then how can we make covenant with you?" And said to they said to Joshua, "Who are your servants?" And Joshua said to them, "Who are you, and where do you come from?" And they said to him, "From a very distant country your servants have come because of the name of the Lord of God. For we have heard the report of him and all that he did to the two kings of Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, so to Sihon and the king of Heshbon and all the king of Bashan who lived in As."
Good job, Ruben. So what are the Gibeonites trying to do? What is their cunning plan?
Make it appear that they were from a distant country.
Yeah. So they're not Canaanites. They're some far-off people who want to be friends with Israel. And they want to hear about Israel's God. It sounds so great. And Israel makes one really big mistake when they do this. Someone else, go ahead and read verse 14. Just verse 14. Tell me what their mistake is.
So they took some of their provisions, but did not ask counsel from the Lord.
So what's the mistake the Israelites do there?
Didn't see God's counsel.
They didn't seek God's counsel. And verse 15, Joshua made peace with them and made a covenant with them to let them live. And the leaders of the congregation swore to them. They made a promise, a binding promise, because they didn't check with the Lord. And it turns out they're not far away, but they're very near. And let's look in verse 17. Someone read verse 17 and see if you see a familiar city in there.
The people of Israel set out and reached their cities on the third day. Now their cities were Gibeon, Kiriath-Jearim, and Kiriath-Jearim.
Which one sounds familiar?
That's
Kiriath-Jearim. This is, just so you know, I say Kiriath because I was in Jerusalem, or sorry, I was visiting Israel, and that's how I learned to say it there. So some of your Bibles looks like it should be Keth-Eben, but I do the hard T just because that's what I was taught to do. So that's what I did.
Bob used to do that too.
What?
Bob used to.
Yeah, it's the more modern pronunciation that our English Bibles don't always pick up. So that's the way I was trained. That's what I say. These are those people. The Israelites promised to protect them, and even as the story goes on, and you have the famous story of the sun standing still in verse 10 as Joshua prays to God and stops. That is to defend the Gibeonites because all the other nations get really angry. They're like, "How dare you betray us and become allies with the Israelites? We're going to destroy you." Israel has to come in and defend them. But Joshua also gives them a job to do in verse 27 because of what they've done. Read verse 27.
No.
Go ahead.
But Joshua made them that day cutters of wood and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord to this day in the place that he should choose.
So what is their job? What does he give them to do? He gives them to be cutters of wood, which is a menial task like a slave, and then also for what? For the congregation and for the... And where is the altar of the Lord found? In the temple. In the place, or at that time, the tabernacle. In the place that he would choose. So the Gibeonites, including those in Kiriath-Jearim, were were given the task of helping care for the tabernacle. Why would that matter for this? Now, why are the people of Beth Shemesh wanting to send them to Kiriath-Jearim? They cared for the tabernacle, and therefore they cared for the what? The ark. If you recall, the people of Beth Shemesh were descendants of the Israelites who were supposed to care for the ark. They were Aaron's children. But they messed up. So what do? Let's send it to the Gentiles who also were supposed to care for it. Let's send it to the slaves. The slaves will take care of it. They'll make it better. See, this is so amazing, guys. Here we have a Gentile people, a people condemned to die, who deceived the Israelites, lied about it, but who believed in Yahweh. You see in verse 24, they said, "It was told to your servants, a certainty that Yahweh, your God, had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. So we feared greatly for our lives because of you, and we did this thing." Why did they lie? Because they believed Yahweh could do what he said he was going to do. Again, not that they did good, lying is bad, but they did believe Yahweh, and so now they're told to serve Yahweh. And they do serve him, and they do trust him. See, a people who were not born into the covenant of Israel were brought into the covenant. The people who were born as enemies of God were made into part of God's people, and now they receive this great honor. This is very much like Ephesians chapter 3. You who were once far off, or Ephesians 2, once who were far off from the Lord have been brought near. You who were not part of the covenant and promise have been brought in. There's always these hints. It was always meant to go to the Gentiles, all the nations. But let's see their honor. Back in chapter 7 of 1 Samuel. Chapter 7, verse 1. The men take the ark as requested. The men of Kiriath-Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. William Blakey, or Blakey, if I get this right, commentator writes, "More timid men might have said, 'The ark has brought nothing but disaster in its train. We will have nothing to do with it.' There was faith and loyalty to God shown in their readiness to give accommodation to it within their bounds." You think about it. What's happened to everyone who's held the ark since it left Shiloh? Yeah. What kind of faith was required to say, we are going to care for the ark? We are going to do good with this. And so they take it to the house of Abinadab, who only shows up here first in the Bible, and yet we later see him again when David finally brings the ark to Jerusalem. 1 Chronicles 13, for example, tells us he goes to Abinadab's home. He holds on to the ark for these 20 years. You can see it right there. The ark is taken while Samson judges all these 20 years. The ark is at Kiriath-Jearim until David comes about. And that's the time where his son Uzzah accidentally touches the ark and is killed in the process. But it's interesting here, Abinadab and his sons take the ark, takes God's commands for the ark very seriously. They were very careful to not do more than what the Bible permitted. They take care of the ark, but the city of Kiriath-Jearim does not become the new Shiloh. It's not the new national shrine. They don't have people coming through and gawking at it. In fact, no one else comes. The feasts don't take place here at Kiriath-Jearim. When the tabernacle is finally put back together, we find out it's in the city of Nob, not here. Because they understand this is not the city God had chosen. They were just temporary caretakers. Then they not only do that, they bring it to the house of Abinadab, and then what do they do to his son?
Consecrate him and put him in charge.
Consecrate, put him in charge. What does consecrate mean? It's such a fancy word we don't use too often. Consecrate.
Set aside.
Set aside, okay, yeah. Good, I like that. What else? Make holy, which is probably to set aside. Anything else? Say to give a special task, responsibility. What's interesting is the same Hebrew root word as verse 20 talks about the holy God. So they realized and they knew from God's commands that this holy object required a holy person to care for it. In the Old Testament, to be sanctified meant to be set apart. They set apart persons or places or objects to be holy and committed to God. And we see, I'm going to do it. Leviticus 8. In Leviticus 8, you can flip there if you want to with me. Sorry, I go back to Leviticus and get the history here. Just the process of consecrating the priests. Because Aaron and his sons had to be prepared for serving God. Someone go ahead and read verses 14 through 18 of Leviticus chapter 8 for me. Anyone got it?
Then he brought the bull of the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bull of the sin offering. And he killed it. And Moses took the blood, and with his finger put it on the horns of the altar around it, and purified the altar, and poured out the blood at the base of the altar, and consecrated it to make atonement. And he took all the fat that was on the entrails, and the long lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys with their fat, and Moses burned them on the altar. And the bull and its skin and its flesh and its dung, he burned up with fire outside the camp, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then he presented the ram of the burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram.
These are sections that when I do my devotional reading, I don't know about you, but my eyes just start to gloss over. Sometimes maybe it's a weakness in me, but I was like, oh, okay, he just did another ram. And then verse 22, then present the other ram, the ram of ordination, and his sons, and Aaron and his sons lay their hands on the head of the ram, and he killed it. Does the same thing again. Okay, what does this matter? This is like crazy. Why is he saying this again? Lots of ceremony that we jump over. And yet, can someone read verses 33 and 34? Because Moses explains why he's doing this.
And you shall not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days, until the days of your ordination are completed, for it will take 7 days to ordain you. Next one.
And verse 34 as well.
As it has been done today, the Lord has commanded to be done to make atonement for you.
To make atonement for you. This long process that for us, we're just reading, they can go for 7 days. To make atonement for the priest. What does it mean to make atonement for someone?
Propitiation.
Propitiation. Yes, another fancy word to use it. I like that. What is wrong with Aaron and his sons? Yeah, but they're just like kind of dirty. Yeah, but let's think. Is Aaron just like a bad sinner. Like, he gets angry sometimes with his children, and has a little impatient. Is that the level of Aaron's sin? What did Aaron do while Moses was on the mountain? He set up a false god. Like, this is really bad.
Then he lied about it.
And then he lied about it. And he's like, oh, it just kind of happened. I just threw that in the, oh, I didn't, there is a golden calf.
I like that story.
Yeah. This is so clear. And so he says, verse 35, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, you shall remain day and night for 7 days, performing what the Lord has charged, so that you do not die. For so I have been commanded. They're about to try and minister for the sake of the people. They're going to stand between God and the people and be righteous for them. Be their hope in saying God can forgive you. And yet they had sinned greatly, and so they had to be forgiven of their sin. They had to be consecrated, made holy, made right. Mark Rooker, writing about this, says, one of the purposes of the ordination ceremony was that atonement would be provided for the priests. The priestly activity was a reminder of the status of the priests as sinners in need of atonement to carry out their sacred responsibilities. God must use imperfect people to serve as leaders of his people. He does not demand perfection from those who are willing to serve him. And then in chapter 9, they offer a sacrifice, and God accepts it. And the people are forgiven of their sins. He who was the chief of sinners has now become chief mediator. What forgiveness. When they consecrated Eleazar, they are knowing we are following this long tradition of trying to make a sinner holy, to be served by God. They took that very seriously, versus the people, the elders of Israel were just like, let's just get the ark, let's just go. Take it into battle, we're just going to help us win. Or the people or the Philistines who tried to put their God over Yahweh. Or the people of Beth Shemesh who just put God on display and said, let's worship God the way we want to worship him. The people of Kiriath-Jearim stopped and took God very seriously. You could sum it up this way. They did what's required of following God. They followed Yahweh by believing in God, believing God as Abraham did. It's Genesis 15:6. They believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned to them as righteous. They believed Yahweh enough to take the ark. But then secondly, they actually obeyed God's commands. Their faith was worked out in their works. You could say, it's an old illustration, but it's so helpful, I think. The idea of putting faith and works together is, I could say all I want that, this chair, I really trust in this chair. This is a good chair, solidly built. It'll hold me if I sit on it. It'll be very safe and comfortable. But I'm just not, what am I not doing? I'm not sitting in it. Do I really show my trust? If I do this, and I'm like, okay. This is a good chair. This is a great chair. I totally have my complete total faith in this chair. But I'm hedging my bets, right? I'm still like, okay, but I can, kind of, maybe. Okay. What shows that you truly believe in a chair? Sit on it. I trust it. I trust it to hold me. And in the same way, especially when it comes to worship, when we trust God, we say, here's how he says he is to be worshipped. Here's how he says he is to be followed. I trust and I obey. In the same way, in our new covenant, we want this holiness. And just like all the priests of Israel, especially Aaron, we too are the chief of sinners. We too do not come clean and perfect. We too need to be cleansed. And we are cleansed by the blood of Jesus, who died in our place. Hebrews 4, verse 14 through 16. You don't have to turn to me, just listen if you'd like to. Pastor gave a magnificent sermon on this. If you want to go back online and listen to it. It was really good. Yeah, it was chapter 4. Come on. I thought it was good.
Well, that's reminding me.
Okay. But chapter 4, verse 14 through 16 says, "Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every way has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find help in time of need." We can find help. We can approach God's throne. We can see and stand before the holy God because we have a high priest who experienced all the temptation we did and yet never sinned. We have a high priest who we can fully trust and understands. We'll get to it next week when we see then chapter 7, verse 3 of 1 Samuel. Samuel, who's been absent this entire time, who has been a prophet, but not yet the national ruler. When the ark is returned, he comes back on the stage. He says to the whole house of Israel, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, put away the foreign gods and the Ashereth from among you, and direct your heart to Yahweh. Serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines." So the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashereth, and they served Yahweh only. This wake-up call works. The people served Yahweh, and as we'll get to, they won in battle. It's just a good reminder to us. And in fact, again, the hope of, I have to throw this in there, I can think about this, but this is, being Hanukkah. God uses people like us to wake up his people. He uses Gentiles to wake up Jews. He uses believing family members to wake up unbelievers. How you live before them, the gospel that you share, might be used by God to put away their idols. So live well, serve well, worship well, preach the gospel, trust God to move in their heart.